All right, let's dive in. This time, it's Neuralink. And wow, you guys really went all out, huh? You sent in so much stuff, articles, research, even that interview where Elon Musk compares using Neuralink to taking ayahuasca in the Amazon. I mean, come on.
That's pretty wild.
It seems like you're all really trying to wrap your heads around not just the tech, but like the whole philosophical side of it.
Yeah, it's definitely not just about treating medical conditions. Like, what does it even mean to be human if we have this kind of tech?
Exactly. So let's maybe start with the basics for anyone just tuning in. We're talking about essentially connecting our brains to computers. But what does that actually look like? I mean, are we talking like wires coming out of our heads?
Okay, so picture this, all right. A tiny little device implanted right in your brain. It uses these threads, super thin, like way thinner than a human hair. And these threads have electrodes on them that can listen to, all the electrical signals from your neurons, like the chatter of your brain.
So basically, it's like eavesdropping on your brain.
In a way, yeah. And we're talking over 1,000 electrodes, so it's listening to a lot of neurons.
Whoa. Okay, so it's listening, but like what's it actually doing with that information?
Right now, the main focus is on helping people who are paralyzed regain control.
Hmm.
Like Noland.
Oh, yeah. Nolan, the first guy to get the implant.
Exactly. He's a quadriplegic, volunteered for that PRIME study. Super brave.
I remember reading about that. It's pretty amazing to think about, just thinking about moving a cursor on a screen and it actually happens.
He actually described it as a real aha moment. And he's been working hard training with that WebGrid game they use.
Yeah, I saw he's getting crazy fast with it.
Seriously. It just shows you how adaptable the human brain is,
Yeah, and his dedication, too. But speaking of communication, Elon Musk keeps saying Neuralink could let us talk telepathically one day. Like, no more talking, just thinking to each other.
Right. It's pretty wild to think about.
But, I can't help but think sticking something in your brain, that can't be totally safe, right? I mean, are there risks?
Oh, for sure. Neuralink knows that. And they've put a ton of effort into making it as safe as possible. Like the surgery is done by a robot, super advanced, so it minimizes any damage to brain tissue.
Wait, a robot brain surgery?
Yeah.
It's called the R1, and it can place those super fine threads with, like, pinpoint accuracy. Way less risk of hitting blood vessels or anything.
Wow, that's incredible.
I know, right?
But still, having something implanted in your brain long term, you got to think about the ethics of it all, right?
Definitely. Big questions about data, privacy, security, all that. I mean, what if someone hacks into your Neuralink and gets your thoughts? That's kind of scary.
It's like Black Mirror stuff, right? Straight out of a nightmare.
Totally. But Neuralink says they're taking security super seriously. They've got all these protections in place, constantly updating them, too. It's a huge challenge, but they seem committed to it.
And speaking of challenges, I know Nolan has had a few bumps in the road, right? I mean, it's not all smooth sailing. But yeah, he's been really open about that. Remember when he was doing that WebGrid game and his performance, like, dipped suddenly?
Oh, yeah.
Turns out the electrodes had shifted a little. Probably just the brain tissue moving naturally,
The brain's not exactly still in there, is it?
No, not at all. But the Neuralink team, they figured it out, created a software update that, compensated for the shift.
That's pretty amazing.
Right, so they're constantly learning and adapting as they go.
So it's not just about the hardware, it's about the software, too.
Absolutely. They're putting a ton of effort into the user interface, making it really intuitive. Like they're working on this quick scroll feature so Nolan can scroll through text just by thinking.
No more mouse or trackpad.
Exactly. It's wild.
So they're really thinking about how to design an interface that works with the brain.
Yeah, and they're getting feedback from Nolan all the time,
Yeah.
using his experience to make it better. It's a real collaboration.
It's like they're building this bridge, between the mind and the digital world.
That's a great way to put it.
But speaking of connections, I was reading that they're using Bluetooth right now to connect the implant to devices. Bluetooth. Seriously. It seems kind of, I don't know, basic for something this advanced.
Right. You'd think they'd have something fancier.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, actually.
Really, how so?
Well, at this stage, they need something that works with, lots of different devices, phones, computers, all that.
So it's about compatibility.
Exactly. Bluetooth's everywhere, and it's reliable, even if it's a little slow.
So it's a good starting point.
Yeah, but they're definitely looking into other options for the future. Things like ultra-wideband technology, which is way faster.
Oh, so that's on the horizon.
Definitely. I mean, think about it. A world where the connection between your brain and your devices is, instant. No lag. That's the goal.
That would be pretty incredible. But, we've been talking about all this tech, but I think it's time to dig a little deeper into the brain itself. You mentioned these electrodes listening to neurons firing. Can you, break that down for us? What even are neurons, and how do they make thoughts happen?
Right. So neurons are like the tiny little building blocks of your brain. They communicate with each other through these electrical signals and chemical signals. Imagine like a giant network of wires, all connected, constantly buzzing with activity. That's your brain.
So my thoughts, my feelings, it's all just electrical impulses.
Pretty much. It's wild, right?
It is. So how does Neuralink actually tap into this network? Where do they put the electrodes, and what are they picking up?
One of the key areas they're focusing on is the motor cortex. That's the part of your brain that controls movement. It's in the frontal lobe, just behind your forehead.
So when I think about, reaching for my coffee cup, that thought starts in my motor cortex.
Yep. And by putting electrodes there, Neuralink can basically listen to those signals before they reach your muscles.
So you can, move things with your mind.
Exactly.
That's crazy. But how does it tell the difference between different movements? Like, if I want to move my hand up instead of down, how does it know?
That's where the AI comes in.
Yeah.
They're using machine learning training algorithms to recognize the patterns in your brain activity that mean different things. Like, oh, that pattern means he wants to move his hand up.
So the more you use it, the better it gets at understanding you.
Yep. It's a constant learning process. The AI keeps refining its ability to read your brain, getting more accurate all the time.
So we've got AI and brain-computer interfaces all working together. Pretty futuristic stuff.
Definitely. It's like science fiction becoming reality.
But let's not forget about the human side of it. Nolan, he's really paving the way, showing us what's possible. His courage and his determination, it's pretty inspiring.
Totally. He's not just a patient. He's like a pioneer, helping to shape the future of this technology by sharing his experience.
It's a real partnership, Human ingenuity meeting cutting-edge tech. But Elon Musk, he's got even bigger plans for Neuralink, right? He talks about merging with AI, downloading knowledge, all sorts of wild stuff.
Oh, yeah, he definitely thinks big. And while some of it might sound like science fiction, you can't deny the potential of this tech.
Imagine, being able to control devices with your thoughts, downloading information directly into your brain, learning new skills instantly.
It would totally change everything, wouldn't it?
But, with any new tech, there are risks. What about social inequality? Will this just create a bigger divide between those who can afford it and those who can't?
Yeah, that's a real concern. And it's something Neuralink says they're thinking about. They want to make it accessible to everyone, but that's going to take a lot of work and some careful planning.
It's not just about the tech. It's about how we use it. Well, let's get back to the nitty-gritty of how it works. You mentioned the implant goes in the motor cortex. Can you explain, the anatomy of the brain a little bit? Why is that the target?
Okay, so think of your brain like a command center. You've got all these different departments, each controlling something different. And the motor cortex, that's the movement department.
So every time I move my arm or tap my foot, that signal is coming from the motor cortex.
Exactly. And it's organized, get this, like a map of your body. So the part that controls your hand is right next to the part that controls your wrist and so on.
So it's like a tiny little person mapped out on my brain. That's wild.
See, it's called the homunculus. Anyway, Neuralink puts those electrodes right in the motor cortex, and they can pick up the signals that fire when you think about moving.
So if I think about moving my hand, Neuralink can hear that thought.
Basically, yeah. It picks up those electrical signals and learns what they mean. It's like, oh, that pattern means he wants to move his hand to the left.
That's insane. So I could control a robot arm with my mind.
Exactly. That's one of the goals. But, there are limits. Right now, it's best at decoding simple movements, like reaching for something or typing. More complex stuff, like playing the piano, that's way harder.
Yeah, that probably involves a whole bunch of brain areas working together, not just the motor cortex.
You got it. But as the tech gets better, they'll probably start putting electrodes in other parts of the brain, too. So who knows what they'll be able to decode then?
Okay, that's kind of scary, right? What happens to our privacy if they can read all our thoughts? And what if someone uses this tech to control people?
That's the big ethical dilemma, isn't it? It's powerful tech, and we need to make sure it's used for good. We need rules, guidelines, all that.
Data security is going to be huge, too, right? You don't want anyone hacking into your brain.
Absolutely. Neuralink knows that, and they're putting a ton of effort into making it secure. But it's a constant battle. Hackers are always trying to stay one step ahead.
It's like a a digital arms race.
Exactly. We have to protect our brain data just like we protect our bank accounts.
Speaking of big ideas, Elon Musk, he doesn't exactly think small, does he? He's talking about merging with AI, becoming like superhuman.
Yeah, he's definitely got a grand vision. And while some of it might seem far-fetched, I think it's important to, dream big. This tech has the potential to change everything.
Imagine a world where you can control any device with your thoughts, or like download knowledge instantly. No more school.
Uh-huh, right. That's a pretty wild thought. But even if we don't go that far, think about the possibilities for, treating diseases, paralysis, blindness, Alzheimer's. This tech could change millions of lives.
That's the part that really gets me excited. The potential to help people is huge. But again, we have to make sure it's accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy.
Couldn't agree more. It can't just be a technology for the elite. It has to benefit all of humanity.
Okay, so we've talked about the brain, we've talked about the future, but how about the practical stuff? How does the implant actually talk to devices? You said they're using Bluetooth right now.
Yeah. So there's this little device, they call it the link. It sits under your skin, kind of like on your skull.
Yeah.
And it processes the signals from the electrodes and sends them